This is the MBA Wire, episode number 26. Tell me about a lie that you've told. Did you get caught? Yeah, I told a lie once. When I was a kid, I was having a pillow fight with my younger sister, and I knocked over my mother's favorite statue off a shelf. When they got home, they asked me what happened, and I said that a bird flew in and knocked it over. But we were able to get the bird out. I'm not sure they really believed me, but what was cool was my younger sister, when they asked her, she just looked at them and straight up lied for me. She was just like, yeah, that's what happened. So that was cool. She protected my back, she got my back, and we didn't get in trouble. Anyway, let's hit it.
Inspirational MBA talk with successful alumni to motivate you during your application run. We go behind the scenes of every story, talk business, and show you why it's worthwhile to never give up on your MBA dream. And now, here's your host with the most, Mateo Chang.
What's happening, citizens of the Wire? Welcome back to another episode of the MBA Wire. I am here sitting with Keshav Malani, London Business School graduate in 2014 of the full MBA program. Keshav, thank you so much for lending us your time here to talk to our students about, your story and your journey through the application process, which is obviously difficult for many of you, through his experience in London Business School, and also some of the things that he's been doing now. Thank you. Can you just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me here. Just a little background on myself. I was born in India, Kolkata, India, and then I moved to the U.S., specifically San Francisco Bay Area, when I was 12. And have been there ever since until I came to London for actually living purposes. So once I moved to the U.S., that was starting in middle school, and then I did undergrad at Berkeley. That's UC Berkeley, and then from there I spent about 5 years at Deloitte doing consulting, so risk consulting as well as strategy. Did anything from intellectual property work, doing supply chain, M&A, just strategy work for different companies. So from there, it was about the 4-year mark. So I spent 5 years at Deloitte. At the 4-year mark, I really started looking at it and saying, okay, well, I want to be more challenged, and that's really kind of what drives my career in general, in my life in general. In saying I want to learn more things, and I want to learn new things. And I was just finding that I wasn't getting as much as I wanted after the 4 years. So it was about looking at MBA as well as looking at industry and deciding between the two and saying, where am I going to get the most out of it? So the decision came to the MBA because honestly, I felt like I had learned quite a bit in consulting, but then there was just like more specialties around finance, marketing, as well as accounting that I just didn't have while doing consulting that I wanted to have if I was going to run my own company or run somebody else's company. And was like, I'm going to get that in MBA. I want that. And then other aspects around international network and stuff, I'll talk about it in a second.
All right, great, Keshav. Thank you and welcome. Keshav, so many of our listeners are right now going through the application process, and as you know better than any of our students, it is a difficult process. Well, let's kind of take a trip back in time and recollect what were some of your main difficulties, and how you overcame them during the application process.
Yeah, that was that's a time I look back at, and I try and push it out of my memory. Honestly, it was not a very fun time. There were elements of it though that were really helpful, and I think in life in general, not just for the MBA. One of the things I tell people is when I was going through the process, you get one of those essays that requires 2,000 words, and I looked at it, and at first when I started writing, I was like, I'm never going to fill these 2,000 words. It's going to be a nightmare. And then my sister, she's actually an LBS 2012 grad. So she was kind of counseling me. So I had definitely somebody helping me throughout the process. That definitely helped motivate and keep me going. And obviously kind of saw at the end of the tunnel of like, okay, it's amazing. MBA is incredible to go to. So there's something I do want to do from that perspective as well. But essentially going through that, so I started writing those 2,000 words, and I just couldn't. I was like, I'm never going to fill this up. My sister said, no, keep going. Just write. Don't think about what you're going to write. Just put it all down on paper. So I started writing then, and I got to about 8,000 words. And I was like, okay, now I'm good with the 2,000. That's going to be fine. So I started cutting from there. I got to about 4,000 words. And I think that's a really key time when you get to those 4,000 words, because then when you start cutting from there, 4,000 to 2,000, it's a nightmare, because you have to cut out so much of what you have done and so much of what you believe and who you are into just the very basic gist of who you are. And that process right there, going from 4,000 to 2,000, is probably the most enlightening part of doing MBA application, because it really tells you why you want to attend the MBA and if it's worth it for you, and honestly, if this is the right school or not. And these essays are usually pretty standard across the different schools, but just going through that and seeing, okay, well, I think this is a really important factor in my personality that I want to bring out or not bring out in my essays. Will it fit in these 2,000 words? And how do you squeeze it all in to make it make sense? That part was probably the most difficult thing for me to do. Once you're over that, then you become more motivated, because you realize how much fun it's going to be when you're able to meet those goals that you set for yourself, and how that MBA is going to help you do it. So that's soul searching. I call it soul searching. That part is really, really important. And honestly, I tell people who are not even going to do an MBA to actually go through that, because doing that around like the whole 4-year mark in my career was really, really helpful for me, because I had a clearer picture of why I don't necessarily want to go back to consulting, or why I want to do entrepreneurship versus do something else. And it really just kind of kept me going more. I was like, okay, let's do this. Like, this is what I want to go forward with.
The essay part of this process is definitely about soul searching.
I'll actually add one more thing around what was the most difficult thing on the application process for me. And it was probably the GMAT, personally. I think not even more so. I think both, they were quite equivalent. One I enjoyed more, the soul searching I enjoyed. I like to introspect, but I think that GMAT was probably the worst thing I could have done. Really don't like it. I really, really don't like it. But I realize it's a necessary evil for it. Like it's a sort of filter. I think personally, I didn't spend nearly as much time as I should have. Luckily it worked out. I got into, I'm knocking on wood for people who can't see it. I luckily worked out for LBS, and I think they mentioned it as well. They talk about it generally is the GMAT score is really important, but it's not the whole story. And I think certain schools really cut down on any kind of lower end GMAT scores. I mean, it's still pretty high, but lower end GMAT scores simply because of ratings that they want to have. And I'm really thankful that LBS didn't look at it that way. And they were really looking for that kind of full story. Where are you coming from? What are you trying to get to? And how does LBS fit into that? So I think for my GMAT process, I did one of the training program, through Kaplan in the US. And I don't think I paid nearly as much attention as I should have. And I didn't go through all the different exercises as I should have. And I think that was a really key part for me. I really should have spent more time doing that part. I think would have done a lot better on the GMAT, less stress for me. But I do want to say, though, it's not end of the world. Definitely try and get a decent score, no doubt about it. But it's not end of the world. Don't let it discourage you from going through the application process and really putting your all in it. Because a lot of schools, I think a lot of the top schools are really not all about the scores. They really want to see what other things are going on in your life and how does it fit in. To answer the other part of the second question that you had is why LBS? There's quite a few things, but I would say that probably top 2 or 3 things that really stand out for me. And especially looking back, I think they're the ones that shine out the most. Is I really wanted that international experience. So I'm from the US. And so I was looking at the US schools and I knew they were good. I really didn't look towards international schools until my sister was already here at LBS. And she was telling me more about it. And I actually had a chance to come to LBS to just sit in on 2 of the classes, just 2 courses in one day. And I had a chance to really see what it's like to sit in a classroom with basically 80 other people from completely different nationalities, completely different backgrounds. That and the discussion that comes from it, that was inspirational for me. Like, that was amazing. And I was like, okay, this is exactly what I want. And I think a lot of times in the US, we feel like, oh, San Francisco or New York or Chicago are extremely international, or they're melting pots of things. Honestly, you get to London, you realize it's a whole different world. Like that, those are not international cities at all. It's just not the case. And I think probably most people that you see around London are not going to be British people. they're probably going to be international, probably 95% of them. And so that part is just, it's mind boggling. And it pushes you out of your own bounds and pushes your like comfort level in different things and makes you kind of appreciate the world a lot more. So that international piece definitely was a huge factor, and it is a huge factor for me. And I was looking for that. And from the perspective that every business is looking for international. I mean, no, you can't do a startup or any kind of schooling anymore, or business-minded schooling, where you're not looking at international application of things. So what better place to get a network that every single colleague of yours is basically from a different country. So that was a long-winded way of saying international. The other piece for me was obviously the rating. It really mattered to me where I was going to spend the money, because it's a lot of money to go into these schools. And I know there's support things, there's scholarships and others that go on. But for me, it's not just that, it's about time. You're spending 2 years, whatever, 15, 18 or 21 months. I did the 21 months, but you're spending that time at taking that break from your career to do something. It better be worth it. And for me, I was looking through the schools. I think the top 5, the name recognition is really, really important. But that name recognition goes alongside alumni that went to that school. And what reputation does it have when you actually speak to somebody about the school? And when you say, oh, I'm from LBS. And it's a completely different thing. It's like similar to Berkeley. It helps to have that as a background. When you go to another country and they're like, oh, you're from LBS. Okay, awesome. So that part was really important for me, to have that recognition in there.
All right, awesome. Well, can you tell me two of your most memorable moments during your MBA program? We'd like to talk about, some highlights there of your experience here at London Business School.
I think this first one is not as much during the MBA. It was like right at the start of the MBA for me to realize more of what I was about to step into. And it's again on the international side of things. We were going through orientation and they were asking everybody to stand up from different countries. So they were going through all the different countries that we have. And they were asking everybody to stand up. And the first few, the two that stood out for me, one was Azerbaijan. That was like, when am I ever going to meet somebody from Azerbaijan? And the other one was, honestly, the other one stood out was Tanzania. I really did not expect to be able to be around, surrounded by people from all these different countries, but these two stood out the most. And I was like, I need to get to know these people, because I want to be able to say, or be able to go to a country and know somebody there and be like, I can crash on somebody's couch and it's totally fine. And so for me, that was really exciting, because saying, oh my God, I'm going to get to know these people. And thankfully they're my best friends. And so it works out really well from that perspective. And it just, that really kind of shaped a lot of the MBA. Things that really stood out from there, I would say the MBAT tournament, that's a big one. That's like basically Olympics for MBA. That part is really fun. And that happens over at HEC. Like, so all the MBA schools basically just converge on HEC. They have a massive campus and a great campus. And so we all meet there and we compete on everything from go-kart racing, rock climbing, badminton, anything you can think of, cricket. We're competing, salsa dancing. It was amazing. I think that definitely stands out. And then just travel. So we do a lot of treks within LBS. So it's semi-professional. So I got my internship through the professional treks at LinkedIn. And then the personal, like the fun treks, going to Croatia or going to Iceland. I've seen the Northern Lights with my classmates, and it was amazing. I cannot deny that. And then the last one, probably on the international travel as well, comes up to be India. So we do a global exchange through the school, and so we have 5 different ones around the world, and I chose the one in India just because I had never worked in India before in the professional setting, and it was amazing because you bring in basically really, really senior people in companies within the country, and they come and speak to you about what is going on, like where the country is going, where the companies are going, what is it going to be like working in India if you're coming in from outside. And it was just really interesting to see what was coming of my country, basically, and if I see myself there in the future. That part was really amazing.
That's awesome. And it gives you a very global perspective of the market. And something that you said during the conference really stuck in my mind. You had said everybody needs to be thinking international. That's just so true today with the globalization going on and everything. So that is awesome. And And also to add on to the HSC, the tournament that you guys have, I actually interviewed the main guy responsible for organizing that over at HSC last week. Yeah, so that's cool. How many of those events does London Business School win?
We usually come in second, if not, and this year we came in first. So we win quite a few of them. In my year, when I was there, 2013, when I went there, I only went there once, unfortunately, because I was busy on the second time. Ashase won, and we were second. We were like, was it home advantage? No, they were really amazing. Like, I mean, they do an incredible job organizing it, but they really were good at all the things. But yeah, we came in second on that one.
Awesome. All right, nice. Get some good, healthy competition between schools. Yeah, man, that's awesome. It makes me miss my college years. So, talking global, we're I'm here sitting with Keshav, and he is actually a co-founder of an amazing startup that really caught my attention, and it's very relevant to the things that are going on with online and privacy issues today. It's a startup called Powrofyou. I'm going to let Keshav tell us a little bit about this startup and what it means to us as end users and how important this is for, I guarantee you, the next 10, 15 years, it's going to be a very significant shift in how we interact online.
Absolutely. This is the part I do basically on a daily basis. It's Powrofyou, so POWR. With the POWER is taken by Warner Brothers. I'm not sure why, nonetheless. But actually, we like it now. We look at it and we're like, oh, that's a cool name because everybody's changing their name to be like different a little bit. But the idea comes from, and actually the MBA process, the MBA itself really helped me because I had the idea April 11th, 2013, 2:38 p.m. in front of Baker Street Station. It's a moment in my mind because the question that came to me was, why don't we get paid for our data? And that's really what drove Powrofyou in saying, we're creating so much data out there. On a daily basis, every second we're creating data on our phones, laptops, whatever else we're using. And it's only going to increase with the Internet of Things. And all this data is being used by companies to make billions and billions. Some of them are actually giving us something in return. So Facebook or Gmail, whatever, we're using them for free as a service in return for this data that we're putting into it. But behind the scenes, analytics companies and data brokers are also taking this data, essentially without our permission, and they're monetizing that by selling it to brands and agencies as consumer behavior. Well, the thought came, well, that's our data. They're taking it. Well, why shouldn't we be compensated? And that's where Powrofyou really kind of came about because we also had experience from like digital strategy stuff from different brands and the challenge that brands were facing in understanding consumers. So we set up a marketplace where users, so consumers can go on the website, sign up, give us access to different sources. So social media, browser history, mobile data. We aggregate this information, the data that already exists. We aggregate it, we anonymize it so nobody knows who it is. And then we create the reports or insights that brands want to buy about consumer behavior. And the money that we make, we revenue share back with our users. So now you're monetizing your online presence anonymously, but you're monetizing it. And it's about, you're already putting this data out there, so why not earn something from it? And the other piece that we offer, and this is a really important part in how things are going, is the fact that we give you an understanding, you learn about your own data footprint. So you learn about what does this data say about you on our dashboard. So in your account, when you log in, you're able to see insights around, are you driving more engagement on Facebook versus Twitter? You get to see a sentiment analysis of like, are you very positive or negative online? You can also see, are you spending 8 hours a day on social media versus 2 hours on news? And you can set a goal to track that. And then we're going to be introducing kind of personality scores in there. We're going to basically additional insights around Fitbit, your healthiness, productivity with Todoist partnership that we have. So we're introducing more and more so people can get an understanding of what they're putting out there and what does it actually say about their behavior and how people perceive them as well. That's essentially what we're working on at Powrofyou. There's a lot of work to be done. Hopefully we're around the corner of actually being able to monetize that data for our users and kind of share that revenue back with them to prove the model itself and then hopefully scale from there quite a bit more.
Yeah, that kind of raises another question that I think many people have already asked you, but it's more based around security. So what would be the difference of me giving access to account information of other social media to you guys? I mean, what makes you guys like trustworthy in that sense. How do I know that you will take care of my information as well, or what's going on there? I think that's a concern too. In the market today, especially online, consumers are always looking for differentials. In that sense, what's your differential in the security side?
So differential really comes from the part of transparency, and ultimately our brand as Powrofyou, as much as we are doing the tech piece and all that stuff, ultimately our brand is entirely about trust. That is what we're putting out there, because the way things are going, if you don't trust us and if you don't trust a company, you're basically going to pull out. I mean, it's just like with products. If you don't trust a company with a product, you're not going to buy it from them. So we need to ensure that you can trust us. So we do everything we possibly can to ensure that your data is safe, because if we don't have that trust from you, we don't exist, period. And the transparency piece comes in because the more we tell you about what we're doing, and that's why the revenue share. We don't say, hey, we're just going to pay you out per month. Doesn't matter how much money we make from it. We don't say we're only going to share our profits. And that's something we learned as well along the ways. We initially started with profit sharing, saying, okay, when we make money, you make money. And then we said profits make sense. Then somebody pointed out to us and saying, well, you may never make profits. And we're like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, you might always make up more costs to cover the profits. We're like, we weren't thinking that way. That wasn't our intention. But you're absolutely right. From a consumer perspective, you should know exactly what you're going to get. There's no chance of you getting, I'll use the word screwed over, of somebody deciding I'm going to do it other way. So that revenue sharing model is easily auditable in saying, this is how much money you made from the data. This is how much you gave back. So there's no if, but, and then on that. So, as a company, as we grow, we want to give more back to our users, and we want it to be clear as possible how much we're giving back.
Nice. Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. And as you were explaining this to us during the conference, and that's actually what really caught my attention, attracted me, because, sometimes you get these huge big data companies, like for example, Google, that we can actually somewhat feel like we're getting bullied into whatever information we give, but also all the marketing and ads that are targeted to us. We get bombarded with this all day, and it's so hard to find out who to trust online. And I think you're right. Transparency is definitely a very strong first step towards building trust virtually. So that is awesome. Guys, listeners, if you want to check this out, it's www.powrofyou.com. I will have this link up on the profile on our website, the MBAWire.com. If you are interested, definitely check it out, because hey, with the economy the way the economy is going today, any way you can make money, left or right, is welcome. But even more importantly, I think it's very essential for us as a generation who is constantly going online more and more to understand where our data is going and how it's being used. That, I think, will be the most important thing in the next years when we're discussing privacy issues and online rights and legal matters. It's still there's still a big gray area there. So well, Keshav, thank you so much for this time that you've lent us here with this interview. There's so many insights here that I'm gonna have to pick apart. And why don't we I always close an interview off with a final piece of advice. What is your final piece of advice for our students?
There's a lot of things that come to mind, but I think the one thing that really stands out to me in my thinking, as well as how I approach things, is about exposing myself to new ideas and kind of pushing myself and challenging myself in all ways. I think because your listeners are more in the MBA process in general, I would say look for schools that kind of push your boundaries, not just in if you're focused on hey, I just want to do, let's say in my case, it was entrepreneurship. If you're looking for schools just for entrepreneurship, I would say that's not the right approach. I think you should look for things that will make you question other perspectives that you have, and make you look at your entrepreneurship, your startup, whatever idea that you have in a different way. I think that applies in life in general, because you take away frames that you look at things with. And I think for me, I mentioned it earlier, I don't think Powrofyou would have come about if I was in just a kind of startup focus on, okay, tech businesses, this is how they work. I think being at LBS really pushed me in saying, well, question my perspective on how tech businesses work, and understanding, well, why are they working this way? And how can I approach it differently? And I think that's really important in any school, any job that you're at, is really kind of pushing your boundaries and your perspectives and breaking the frames that you look at any problem with.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. Well, guys, that's it for today's episode. Straight out of London, the heart of the financial center of Europe. This is Matteo Chang signing off. See you guys on the next episode.
Thanks for tuning into the MBA Wire. Would you like to know more? Visit us online at thembawire.com today and leave your questions and feedback. While you're there, sign up for an exclusive free audio series to help you strengthen your MBA interview. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the MBA Wire.